all of the admirals now have a clear reason to betray the world government, and this point has now been hammered into our skulls even more with this absolute tear-jerking moment between Admirals Kizaru and Akainu. And what's crazy about this though is that this scene here has finally given us another clue that we need to say that Akainu and Dragon might have once been friends and will very likely fight to the death in the future of the story, just like Kizaru was forced to kill Vegapunk. Which has honestly really left me questioning where Kizaru will up in the future, but what's most shocking about this scene is just the sheer depth of feels on display by these usually emotionless and aloof characters. I mean, basically all throughout Egghead Island we saw Kizaru's internal conflict about fighting his beloved friends, but wow, I never expected it all to explode out of him by lashing out at Akainu like he did right here. I mean, seriously, we've pretty much never seen Kizaru show any real hints of anger ever. And so to get this, where all the pent-up frustration and shame come just pouring out of him like a fountain, is just on a whole other level and certainly made me get caught up in the feelings a little bit as well. But interestingly enough, it's not just Kizaru shocking us in this heart-wrenching scene right here, because Akainu, out of all people, also showed us a side that we have literally never seen ever before as well. Because even though at first he displayed his usual harsh words and fiery temper, when Kizaru finally broke and basically told him to shut up and come to Egghead Island to see for himself, Akainu actually softened up and showed some real sympathy to his fellow Marine Admiral, which is just absolutely shocking. I mean, we're talking about the man who champions absolute justice, the do anything to wipe out the evil pirates, and I mean anything. Remember, he executed his own comrade for fleeing the battle in Marineford. And when he destroyed an entire ship of innocent civilians simply because they might have had a runaway scholar of Ohara amongst them as well. And then in the post-timeskip era, the only real emotions that we've ever seen him display are being quietly frustrated with his new job or literally raging at the world government higher-ups who won't let him do exactly what he wants. But never, and I mean never, has he ever displayed even a single shred of kindness, sadness, or any emotion really that you wouldn't find in a boiling pit of lava. So to say what he said to Kizaru is just so unimaginable that it makes me question everything that we thought about him going forward. Like seriously, could it be that this man actually has a heart? Will he actually become some sort of ally? I mean, should we add Akainu to the Straw Hat candidate list? Well, let's maybe not just go that far, but it really makes me think that maybe all this time as the Fleet Admiral has now made Akainu realize that the world simply cannot be fixed with something as black and white as absolute justice. After all, let's be real, if pre-timeskip Akainu had had his way, there would basically be no freedom, no joy, or even sympathy in the world at all, which is why his shift here from yelling at Kizaru and blaming him to basically apologizing for his harsh words really took me aback and really took me by surprise. And so now I'm really wondering, why exactly did Kizaru's outburst here cause such a dramatic shift in Akainu? Well, I actually think that there are a few reasons, but one I bet you weren't really thinking of is that maybe Akainu learned some real harsh truths about the world government during Vegapunk's speech. I mean, it does seem like he already knew about the power plant since he specifically asked Kizaru about it, but how did he feel about learning that the past world wasn't always covered by a vast ocean? Or how about the fact that the ancient weapons actually have the power to sink the world all over again? Like, did all of these reveals make him a little bit more thoughtful and maybe think twice about the people that he actually works for? I don't know for sure quite yet, but all of this is really fascinating and adds more layers to the admirals, who have kind of always been one of the most interesting groups of characters in the entire story anyways. However, the answer might actually be even simpler than that. Maybe Akainu cares more about Kizaru than we've actually ever known. Sure, the two did grow up in the Marines together and are close-ish in age, so perhaps seeing his friend in such obvious pain actually cracked his otherwise rough personality for once here. Or it could also be my personal favorite theory from this entire chapter, which is that Akainu has or will kill one of his best friends at some point. And this idea all comes from the fact that once Kizaru asked Akainu if he has ever had to kill his best friend, and we get this very ominous ... and Oda is really known at this point for hiding characters' true thoughts behind these dots before. And so it basically means that Akainu here is clearly thinking about something that he doesn't want to share. And so instead of responding with something like, "Of course not, idiot," or "I would if I had to," we instead get this thoughtful version of Akainu that we don't usually ever get to see. So is there a best friend that Akainu has almost killed in the past? Maybe the former Admiral Kuza during the legendary battle to become the fleet admiral. Kizaru could be saying, "Hey, you didn't manage to kill your best friend in that battle." Or what I personally would like to believe is that this scene is actually some foreshadowing of Akainu's future role in the story. Now, let me connect some interesting pieces here. We have this hint here that Akainu has a friend that he might not want to kill. So who in the world is this friend? Well, who do we know is a powerful character on Akainu's level, who's a character that is now in open conflict with the world government and who was a former Marine and is the exact same age as Akainu? Well, if you haven't guessed it yet, you probably didn't pay attention at the beginning of this video, because I'm talking about the leader of the Revolutionary Army, Monkey D. Dragon. And a few other One Piece theorists have actually speculated that Akainu and Dragon were once friends. I mean, we do know for sure now that Dragon was in the Marines, but he left for some still unknown reason. But still, I just have to believe that Akainu and Dragon at the very least knew each other and maybe even were close friends. I mean, just look at how Oda portrays them both in the story right now. We've basically been waiting for ages for both of these characters to actually do something, anything, but instead they've both been just patiently waiting to make their moves. It's really eerily similar, and I think that this is because Oda is saving both of them to eventually face off when the revolutionaries make their big move against the world nobles, which will surely lead to some sort of fight to the death. And so if they were friends, and if they're eventually gonna fight, what will Akainu actually do? I mean, he's just seen Kizaru kill his best friend and suffer really greatly for it, basically in the name of the world government that Kizaru doesn't even know if he trusts in. Will Akainu make a similar choice? I mean, before this chapter, I would have 100% said, yeah, obviously, but now I'm actually not so sure about that, because after seeing all the corruption at the top of the world government, the Gorosei, and also hearing Vegapunk's big speech, maybe he will step aside and just let Dragon complete his mission. Or maybe he'll even let Luffy live out of respect for Dragon. But there is actually one other possibility for Akainu's future that we haven't mentioned quite yet, because remember the secret marine group Sword? Well, turns out there has been some quite strong evidence around for a while now that Akainu is the secret leader of Sword because of this cover page right here. As you can see, here we have Akainu dutifully pruning his bonsai tree with this clear sword tattoo on his right arm. And so if this were a hint at his role as the leader of the secret sword organization, then perhaps Akainu could eventually break free of the world government and lead Sword against the corruption that he experienced during his time as fleet admiral. Or if we want to go really wild here, maybe he'll just take Sword and turn the Marines against the government and just join the Revolutionary Army. I mean, we've already seen one admiral leave to join a pirate group, but more on that chilly admiral in just a second. Because first, I want to talk about Kizaru here, because literally none of the admirals have had as much of a character arc as he just got in Egghead Island. And boy, what a tragic arc it has been. We first knew him as this kind of aloof character who kind of followed orders, but also in a way did what he wanted most of the time. But all of that got pushed aside in Egghead, where by his own words, he had to become a cog in the machine and was ordered to do things that he really did not want to do. Now, we obviously saw this very brutal internal conflict play out over many chapters as Kizaru tried to kill Dr. Vegapunk, but the question we never really got answered was, why did he decide to follow orders? Does he truly believe that there is no hope going against the government, so he just has to follow them and do his job? Or is he just so stuck in his unclear justice that he just follows any orders his commanders throw at him, without trying to question them too much. And well, I think after this chapter, I do think that we have some real answers here. Because clearly, what he has done, as we all expected, has absolutely crushed him. Killing Vegapunk, who we now know was a dear friend of his best friend, has taken his literal soul and stomped on it like a kid trying to smush a balloon. Basically, what he did was a cruel betrayal, and now he is suffering the consequences. And it has truly taken him to depths that we've never seen before, with his tears, yelling at his superior, and possibly even letting Sentomaru escape right here on purpose. As I've mentioned before, this is a broken man that we see in chapter 1124 here. However, as much emotion as he's feeling right now, the surprising thing is that he never once says that he regrets what he did or that it was a mistake. His actions are destroying him, but it seems that he's still 100% committed to the government, for now at least, because if there was ever a time for him to doubt that commitment, I think it would probably be about right now. And so personally, and I think I speak for most of the fan base here, I hope, I'm personally rooting for Kizaru to finally say screw it and just leave the Marines. I'd absolutely love for him to make his own choices for what he wants to do instead of just following orders. And honestly, the best way that I can see that happening is if he actually learns that Lilith is still alive and seems to have inherited most of the other Vegapunks. Beside York, of course, but let's forget about that witch. So if Kizaru does learn about Lilith, that she basically is all of the Vegapunks now, would he want to reunite with her or possibly join her? Because that could possibly mean joining the Straw Hats, or maybe they could go off on their own with Kuma and Bonnie. But really, all I personally want to see is this man to be free from the shackles of the government, because by this point, even if Kizaru hasn't turned on them yet, I don't think Oda is giving us the image of a person that we're supposed to hate, right? I think we can all agree that in a weird way, we're cheering for him. Which, funnily, is exactly what happened with Kuzan, who did leave the Marines during the time skip. And actually, since we're here, we might as well discuss his future role as well, because he's likely the OG Admiral who's going to affect the race for the One Piece the most. Now, obviously, we now know that he joined the Blackbeard Pirates, but we still don't know the true reason why. The only official reason that we know of why he joined was because Blackbeard was fine letting him pursue his own goals, but those goals were never actually stated, and I'm also kind of doubtful if Blackbeard actually trusts Aokiji as well. Regardless though, he is clearly taking his fate into his own hands after being traumatized by the events on Ohara and with Nico Robin. He of course could also play a major role in the next arc, because what may surprise you is that Kuzan also killed, or at least almost killed, not one, but two good friends. Of course, for one, there was the insane duel with Luffy's grandpa Garp, but then we also saw Kuzan freeze Jaguar D. Sol during the Ohara incident as well. So that's a clear link between the Light and the Ice Admiral, and I personally wouldn't be all too surprised if Kuzan showed up in Elbaf, since we do know that Sol is still alive and living there with the Giants. And if he let Sol live, we can be pretty sure that he let Garp live as well. So maybe he ends up betraying Blackbeard and joins up with the Giants, and if the Giants ally with Luffy, then maybe, just maybe, we'll see Kuzan fighting with the Straw Hats instead of against them in the end. Maybe? In case you can tell, I just really want one of the admirals to join the Straw Hats for whatever reason. As for the other two admirals and their future roles, well, Fujitora's motivations are pretty clear at this point. He wants the world to be a more humane place and will do anything to see that evil is wiped out from the world, even if that means going against the world government itself. Obviously, we clearly saw that in Dressrosa, where he apologized to the kingdom of Dressrosa in front of the entire world. And he's even gone as far as to fight his fellow admirals, as we saw when the revolutionaries attacked Marijua and Admiral Greenbull attacked him for letting some of the slaves escape. So in the end, for Fujitora, I think it's pretty much the clearest case that he will go against the world government once all of their corruption gets fully exposed. And then, who knows, he'll probably retire to Wano or something, since he has just so many ties to Wano that still have not been addressed or explained at all. And then we have the Admiral, who's probably the trickiest one to predict a future role for. However, what might surprise you is that Greenbull might actually have the most important job out of all of them at the end of the story. Because while of course we still know very little about him, except that he is a big Akainu fanboy, his powers could be super important after the final battle of the story. And I'm not really sure if he would actually follow Akainu if the fleet admiral decided to leave the world government, but with his forest devil fruit powers, he is basically a nature god or a forest god who can easily restore life to barren countries. We saw exactly that during Wano, which is just absolutely perfect if we think that the entire world could sink beneath the ocean or be destroyed. So perhaps with Green Bull's powers, we could start creating new islands, or at the very least restore life to the land if all gets wiped out by a giant flood, or if the water levels should recede again and a lot of the land that was now underwater is going to be exposed again, he could repopulate that with plant life as well. However, in order to survive the flood at all, they might also need the help of the last remaining official Vegapunk, or at least the only one I personally care about, Lilith. And in this chapter, she finally wakes up as the Straw Hat and giant ships are now sailing away from her home islands. Which is both sad and also very exciting at the same time. I mean, clearly it is a tragedy that the other Vegapunks were lost, but for now it seems like their data and perhaps even some of their memories have been given to Lilith. And so despite Vegapunk's body being gone, he is still functionally alive in Lilith, as she states herself in this very chapter. And I just really can't help but wonder what is gonna happen with her. Now in this video we've predicted before that she will join the crew, which honestly I would love, and we discuss a lot of reasons why right here, because despite her genius intellect, you have to remember that she is basically like a kid who's never experienced the outside world. I mean, just think about that. She has probably never actually been off of Egghead. She's never had to eat or even poop by herself, so now she's got an entire world of new experiences coming her way, and I honestly can't see any better path for her than living and having fun with the crew. And of course, one person who already seems to be fully in tune with her is Luffy, because as soon as Lilith cheers up, Luffy also goes from being majorly depressed to being ready to party in like seconds. And that could actually once again be his natural intuition for people's emotions, or maybe he just saw that she was now at peace with what happened on her home island and kind of cheered up because of that as well. Now, there is, however, still some real mystery about her though, and it was really highlighted twice in this chapter when it seems that she's hearing someone talk to her through her headsets. And clearly this person or thing is giving her information, but she never says who it actually is. It could be the main brain, Punk Records, but I'm pretty sure that she was disconnected from that because she's now no longer connected to York either. So who could it be that is contacting her here? Maybe a pre-recorded message? Possibly. I don't really know for now, but I'm really excited to find out, hopefully sooner than later. Which coincidentally is exactly how I feel about this person right here. And I mean, just wow, Oda is just really trying to hype us up for Elbaf now by hinting at this new character, but honestly there aren't too many clues to really figure out who this might be. If I really had to guess, I would probably say maybe this person right here, because that's the silhouette at the end of the chapter, and it does seem to have a white hat just like the guy drinking here with Crocus. Plus there's the obvious connection with the liquor, but beyond that we don't really know who this guy is supposed to be in the first place. Now some of the usual suspects for theories here are again some people like Scopper Gaban, the former third in command of the Raja Pirates, and this is because Crocus was also part of the Raja Pirates, and we've long expected that Scopper would finally show up near the end of the Grand Line in the New World. But that's really all we have to go on at the moment. Now of course those aren't the only options for this. It could also be the man marked by flames who is supposed to have the final road poneglyph, or maybe even this mysterious figure right here that was shown at the end of chapter 1121. But who knows, maybe it's just Shanks finally telling Luffy to come meet him here, or it could be Prince Loki, the ruler of the giants, or now that I think about it, it could also just be another D-Clan member. Actually, I kind of like the idea a lot here, because that would mean that we're about to get yet another character who can change the world. Because just think about all the D-Clan members that we have right now. Roger, Luffy, Zebek, Blackbeard, some of the recent members, Lily, Vivi, Clover. Like all of these people are some of the most powerful fighters in all of history, and they are said to be the enemies of the literal gods. So can you just imagine what would happen if they were all together on the same crew? I mean, it would mean the end of the world government in all of like 2 minutes. Well, maybe it wouldn't be quite that simple, but if you want to know exactly what would happen if all the D-Clan members were on the same crew, you can click that video right below me. And of course, we also once again have to thank all of our wonderful Patreon members right here who really help us out making great content. If you want to check out what we do over there with monthly bonus content, access to our artwork, and so much more, and want to help out the channel, go check it out. And yeah, you will also get your name in each video. Otherwise, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one below.